Early bets for week 5 in the NFL. I already did guess the spread over on my TikTok at TCali12. Basically cover up all the games, guess the spread as to kind of, get a feel of what I would think, what Vegas thinks, and then we kind of move from there. It helps you with your assumptions, what Vegas's assumptions are. So let's start here with a couple games that caught my eye. Number 1, Jets at Vikings. I made this line Minnesota minus 4.5. I kind of had in my head how San Francisco was laying 4.5 to the Jets week 1. From there, we think Minnesota is now upgraded, right? So bear with me. And then the Jets kind of so. This line's Minnesota minus 2. I think it should be going through 3 here. Like I said, more towards what San Francisco was laying there. And partly here when I looked, Minnesota minus 2.5, Minnesota has a really strong home field, but nobody's home field in the NFL is 3 anymore if you're just joining us. So Minnesota's like a 2-point home fieldish. So this tells me on a neutral, they have Minnesota rated just slightly better than the Jets. And I don't think that's totally true. I really don't. I think the odds makers are having a tough time gauging what they think of the Jets, right? At one point, they're laying 4.5 at Tennessee. And now, so I just think it's been a tough adjustment. And they've also had a tough time adjusting for Minnesota. So to me, I look here, Minnesota, if you think that, they are what they're playing as a 4-0 record, and you think the Jets are kind of so, to me, I just don't think you get to 2.5 here. I'm interested in laying it with Minnesota here, maybe on the money line as well. So I'm going to monitor this line because it seems to be that the early juice is towards the Jets. I think I can actually check that while I'm here. Bear with me. Early juice is indeed. Oh, no. So early juice is towards Minnesota. So early juice is towards Minnesota. If you don't want to lay 3, it could be going that direction. I think a lot of people are going to go look at this line and go, and the public is going to go, wow, Minnesota only 2.5. When you see all those things that say like public money on this, sharps on that, what they don't disclose is the number that the sharps got, right? So if you wake up Sunday morning and Minnesota's minus 3 and it says all the money's on Minnesota, it's like, well, maybe all the money came in at Minnesota minus 2.5, not Minnesota minus 3. So I think I'm going to be betting Minnesota here, at least on the money line. If you have minus 2.5 and then you can get a money line as about minus 145, I take the money line instead there, in my opinion. Here's a really interesting way to understand how much we've adjusted Washington in terms of upgrading them and at the same time downgrading Cleveland, right? So bear with me. A couple weeks ago, Cleveland is laying 6.5 at home to the New York Giants, all right? So that means on a neutral field, they feel Cleveland is about 4.5 better than the Giants. A week later, Washington hosts the Giants, and they are a 1.5-point favorite. So that would say that the Giants and the Commanders were even teams. So if Washington were to play Cleveland on the road with that metric, the line should have been Cleveland minus 6.5. Again, we've adjusted from that. And now Washington hosting Cleveland minus 3, minus 3.5. So that means on a neutral, they think that Washington is about now a 0.5, 2 points better than Cleveland. So what an adjustment we've made from being about 4, the power rating between Washington and Cleveland, to now it's about 1.5 in terms of Washington being favored. So that's a big swing there. And so if you think like, hey, the books aren't catching up to how good Daniels is, maybe this is the week that they did catch up to how good Daniels is and how poor Watson and Cleveland are playing. So I don't know if I'm going to bet that game, but that's just something to keep in mind, to use those numbers, use previous spreads, what they would have been the week before, the look ahead lines, et cetera, et cetera. I think another interesting disparity here is Buffalo's laying 1 at Houston. So let's use Jacksonville as kind of a metric here. Buffalo hosted Jacksonville Monday Night Football. That line was 6 and actually opened 7, went all the way down to 4.5. So Buffalo minus 4.5 hosting Jacksonville. And then Houston, same story, hosting Jacksonville last week. That line opened like 6, went down to, it actually opened 7, believe it or not. So same situation, closes 4.5. That to me would say Houston and Buffalo are pretty much even teams. And now the books are taking a clear stance that they think Buffalo is better than Houston by about 2.5, 3 points, as Houston's now a home dog of 1. I don't know if that's entirely true. I'm not looking to fade the Bills after what we saw on Sunday Night Football, usually there's too much of an overreaction. So the books are not really overreacting to that because they got Buffalo as a favorite at Houston. I lean Houston in that game, by the way. Here's a pick for you. I'll give you this. Jacksonville is -2.5 hosting Indy. When I did guess the spread, I said Indy -1. And with Jacksonville being a 2.5 point favorite here and getting more money, the line's going their way. This could go to 3. I find that really hard to believe. If Indy +3 pops up here, that's going to be an auto hit for me. I already sprinkled a little 2.5, but definitely a play if this thing gets to 3 on Indy, because I just, again, I don't believe that to be true. Another interesting one, I already bet Carolina +4 at the Chicago Bears. I'm actually looking at a 4.5 on the board right now. So to me, right, Chicago lays 3 at home to the Rams. They obviously win, but it was a close game. And this Carolina team, I'm not really downgrading them from that Cincinnati game. I think once you see the advanced numbers, the advanced box score of Cincinnati and Carolina, you're going to see, look, Carolina, they kind of shot themselves in the foot a couple of times, made their own mistakes. And one of them particularly in my head is Hubbard on that first drive. They go for it 4th and 1 on the goal line. They don't get it. That would be, the expected points on that drive, on that play, having the ball inside the 5-yard line would have been Carolina to score 5.5, 6 points. So again, if you're an advanced numbers guy, if it's too much for you, I get it. But just look at like the variance of that type of stuff. An inch separates Carolina from going up 7-0 in that game. So to me, I think it's a bit of a maybe an overreaction to maybe downgrade Carolina. And for this to now be 4.5, 4, I think I would love to play Carolina here +4. I'm not getting off the Carolina train quite yet, and I still have to see it more with Chicago. So that's a play for me right off the bat, Carolina +4, just based off the numbers. Another one that caught my eye, Dallas at Pittsburgh, right? So you have Dallas here. I made this Dallas -1 at Pittsburgh. I thought Dallas would be about 3 points better on a neutral, give Pittsburgh their home field, Dallas -1. Maybe I'm really wrong on Dallas. I really could be, but extended week here for them. Pittsburgh going to be a favorite at home here. We all know the Tomlin difference between when he's a dog and when he's a favorite. We saw that this past weekend against Indianapolis. So Dallas +2.5 is an eye I'm certainly eyeing here. And that is already, let's see if that's done anything. No, it's 2.5. So I think Dallas is going to be an interesting play for me. I probably will tease that 2.5 to 8.5. That's Pittsburgh plays a lot of low scoring games. Pittsburgh has been kind of a great way to tease both sides of it. Actually teased Indy last week against Pittsburgh. So that's a number I'm looking at least for an early teaser piece. And I want to dive into another one, right? So you got Green Bay is laying 3.5 at the Rams. I made it in my guess, Green Bay -6. And the reason I did that was because San Francisco, a banged up San Francisco team, laid 6.5 at the Rams. The Rams got one of the weaker home field advantages in the NFL. You just looked, San Francisco, there were more San Francisco fans at that game when San Francisco played at the Rams. I expect Green Bay to do a similar thing. Big time national fan base. So they get a very weak home field. So I thought Green Bay would lay a similar number at the Rams. They're not. They're laying 3.5. If this thing gets to 3, certainly going to play Green Bay. I would still play it at 3.5, honestly. I know Jordan Love didn't quite look himself. I think he got a little more comfortable as the game went on, but it was a little too late. So I think another week of him getting healthier, I'm interested in Green Bay here. So I just think if you look at those numbers disparities, right? Use a previous line to help you understand what the adjustments are being made on Vegas's end and in your own head. Monitor this tonight, okay? We haven't seen Seattle play Detroit yet on Monday Night Football, but right now Seattle's a 6-point favorite hosting the Giants. Seattle's supposed to lose the game, right? They're dogs at Detroit. What happens to this line, Seattle win or lose? You will see, 1, how overreactions work, and 2, if they're justified or not in your head. So right now it's showing 6. Just put a little bullet on that and see what they end up doing to that game. Same thing with Miami. -1, -1.5 at New England next week. We haven't seen them. When they announced Huntley was going to start, the line went in Miami's direction. So the books clearly like Huntley better than the other options, Skylar Thompson, etc. So interesting there. I'd say this early bets, Minnesota, Carolina, maybe Houston, Dallas teaser. Did I cover all that? Yeah, I think I got all that. And let's wrap it up with this. Monday Night Football next week, New Orleans at Kansas City. This is really interesting if you do this math here. So Kansas City was minus 3.5 at Atlanta, Sunday Night Football 2 weeks ago. That means on a neutral field, Kansas City was 5.5 better than Atlanta on a neutral. Okay, we got that. New Orleans and Atlanta played this past week. Atlanta was a 2.5 point favorite. That means that Atlanta's slightly better than New Orleans, or pretty much, in my opinion, even teams. So now, I think on a neutral, judging by that, the neutral number should be Kansas City minus 5.5 against New Orleans. Now Kansas City home field, 1.5, 2 points. That gets you to 6.5, 7. This line is KC minus 5. So you tell me, are you upgrading New Orleans last week, or is this an upgrade on Kansas City for going into Los Angeles Chargers and getting a win? I don't entirely love laying it with Kansas City here, but that's just an adjustment to keep in mind here. I think if you're really a Kansas City guy, you're saying to yourself, I don't think this adjustment's right, if you're looking to back Kansas City. So that's just how some of the numbers work. Hope you enjoy. Make sure, again, always catch Guess the Spread on my TikTok at TCali12 and follow me in the Pickett app so I can log some of these. Other than that, enjoy Monday Night Football and enjoy the upcoming Week 5.